dinner. Didn't have time to brush my teeth before I put my little person to bed. You know, Camp Mystic is something that I think everybody on this planet is familiar with, at least Americans. If you are not familiar with it, then I will refresh your memory. Camp Mystic is where all the children and counselors drowned, 27 to be exact. There was a rainstorm, a creek on July 4th, overnight, July 4th. And other camps evacuated, but Camp Mystic not. And it was the only sleepaway camp where campers died. 130 people died along the river. But two big things have happened this week to me. One, Camp Mystic, Tweety, the remaining owner of the camp, because her husband Dick was killed in the flood, she wrote a letter with other family members. And two, okay, Amos, you're supposed to be quiet. Thank you. Camp Mystic's emergency plan was released. And it's sort of horrifying, just to be totally honest. I'll let people hop on for a minute. And if anybody has any thoughts or questions, drop them in the chat. Yeah, it's interesting. Camp Mystic is a for-profit camp. A lot of our camps are, like in North Carolina, we have Camp Seagull, Camp Cheerio, Camp Seafair. They're run by the YMCA, which is a nonprofit. So Camp Mystic is a little bit different. It's family-owned, and it is a for-profit camp. So I guess it's not surprising that they want to reopen because they want to make a profit. And the family is many generations of family, and many people in Tweety's child group are involved. The camp opened in 1926. So it would be their 100-year anniversary this summer. The parents who lost children are speaking out. Yes, they absolutely are, which is why we are doing this video, because I think that's really important. And the parents, they call themselves Heavens 27. The parents said they haven't heard anything from the camp for months. And I'm sure, there's lawsuits and all sorts of stuff. But if I were Tweety, a note goes a long way, or an apology, right? Like, I am so sorry that we screwed this up. Just own it. Own it. Are there less regulations? Well, it's interesting you asked that, Beverly. So you can be accredited by the National kind of Camping Association. In Texas, there are, I think, 76 accredited camps. 8 of them alone are in Carr County, which is where Camp Mystic was. Carr County, Camp Mystic was not accredited. And so one thing you'll notice is you can tell by looking at their safety plan. The safety plan, I'm on the board at Camp Trinity, which is a nonprofit camp owned by the Episcopal Diocese in North Carolina. And our emergency plan is extensive. I doubt their lawyers would allow any admissions. Well, you know what? Years ago, a child was killed at Disney World. He was playing by the lake at the Floridian Hotel, and it said, don't get in the water, and he was just playing, and an alligator grabbed him, and he was murdered by this alligator. And I was writing quite a bit for Disney at the time, and I said, I want to write the story. And they were like, my editor was like, no, we cannot write the story. We're not writing the story. And I said, let me write the story, and you submit it to your higher-ups. And the story was, we're so sorry that this happened. This should never have happened. And it was written by It was published on Disney's blog, written by me. And, the family didn't sue Disney. And they could have. But it was like, they knew it was a terrible accident, right? But this wasn't an accident, which is what we know about Camp Mystic, which makes it harder. So yesterday, 2 emails went out from Camp Mystic. One went out to the families of the 27 that died, and 2 hours later, a second one went out to families. The camp emails were to announce, now they hadn't heard anything in months, to announce that the camp is going to reopen. Quote, "We are not only rebuilding cabins and trails, but also a place where laughter, friendship, and spiritual growth will continue to flourish." The email to past campers read, "We look forward to welcoming you back inside the green gates." The messages also included plans to erect a memorial on Mystic grounds in honor of the girls who died there. This prompted, according to the New York Times, immediate waves of shock and anger among the families. They said they had received no other communication from the camp in months. The families, Blake Bonner, whose daughter Lila was 9 and she died, the families of deceased Camp Mystic campers and counselors were not consulted about and did not approve this memorial. I imagine that if you feel like a camp is responsible for your child's death, and then the camp says, "We want to do a memorial," it would be like a drunk driver wanting to come and put flowers on your child's grave. No, negative ghostwriter. No. If you remember, the head of Camp Mystic was tracking the weather beforehand, but they're not sure if he saw this urgent warning from the National Weather Service. Did he see it? Did he not see it? We don't know. But there was an emergency alert to phones in the area, which the camp operators did say they got this emergency alert to phones. But they did not evacuate. And the river rose from 14 feet to 29.5 feet in 60 minutes. Now, one thing that's really important is that there was an emergency plan. Now, the emergency plan at Camp Mystic is very different than the emergency plan at the Herman Sons Life Camp down the road. The Herman Sons Life Camp emergency plan says this, and they didn't lose any children in the flood. "It is important for all of our staff to understand the seriousness of these policies and procedures. In 1987, the Guadalupe River took the lives of 10 campers from the Pot of Gold Camp, our neighbor." They also, the Herman Sons Life Camp, which had an emergency plan, had an evacuation plan, and followed the plan, said this: "The flash flood emergency action plan outlines specific details on monitoring flooding conditions in 2 evacuation phases, one to be used when advance warning is received, and the other in the event of late or no notification." So Camp Mystic's emergency plan is this, and I'm going to let you look at it yourself. Okay, well, shoot, it's going to be hard to see. Hang on. Okay, maybe you can see it a little bit. "All campers on Senior Hill must stay in their cabins. Those on the flats must also stay in their cabins." There you have it. Stay in your cabins. They had no emergency plan. The emergency plan says this specifically. "In case of flood, all campers on Senior Hill must stay in their cabins. They will be given instructions through the loudspeaker. If the electricity is off, a walkie-talkie will be used. Food and other supplies will be delivered to Senior Hill by boat or truck." So they're saying, if there's a flood, Stay in your cabin. We will get you food by boat, but you do not leave your cabin. Campers and counselors never, and it's in all caps right there, never wander away from your cabin. Those on the flats must also stay in their cabins unless told otherwise by the office. All cabins are constructed on high, safe locations. Is that still the plan today? That was the plan for this summer. So the reopening, yes, is the satellite camp, but it is still part of Camp Mystic. So the same leaders of Camp Mystic are reopening the satellite camp, which originally opened in 2020. And they call that camp, it has a different name. What's that dumb thing called? Camp Mystic Cypress Lake. It's right down the way. Camp Mystic Cypress Lake. No evacuation plan. Sile Stewart, the mother of Sile, responded Tuesday with an anguished, blistering statement that declared, "The truth is, Camp Mystic failed our daughters. Camp Mystic is pressing ahead with reopening, even if it means inviting girls to swim in the same river that may potentially still hold my daughter's body." In August, many of Heaven's 27 came together for Senate Bill 3. It was a package of state camp safety reforms. The new legislation requires youth camps in Texas to build cabins, move existing ones away from dangerous floodplains. They also require emergency response plans. State inspection add that cabins have to be moved out of floodplains. And then Senate Bill 3 requires sirens for flood-prone areas and gives community the funding they need to install them. Camp Mystic, while saying they supported this legislation, is very interesting because they are a member of the Camping Association for Mutual Progress. And that trade association lobbied against these bills, saying that the changes would require moving and rebuilding cabins would be prohibitively expensive. So they're part of an association that lobbied against reform while saying that they're supporting reform. The Eastland family said publicly they support the legislation, and they sent letters to legislators affirming their backing, quote, especially the creation of detection and warning systems that would have saved lives on July 4th, and they refer to the deadly flooding as a, quote, catastrophic 1,000-year weather event. It wasn't a 1,000-year weather event. Like, they can't just own what they did. I don't know Tweety Eastland, and I'm sure somebody's going to tell me that, it's their aunt's sister and she's wonderful. But it doesn't seem like it to me. In 2011, the Federal Emergency Management Agency placed much of Camp Mystic in the 100-year floodplain, an area to be at high risk of flooding. The Eastlands successfully challenged those designations, which would have limited renovation projects and required flood insurance. They fought for it not to be a 100-year flood zone, to keep it as a 1,000-year flood zone. I lost my only sibling to cancer. He just got cancer. It was, totally random. He was 18, died when he was 19. And he got to live a lot longer than these girls. And it wasn't anybody's fault. I have dropped off all 4 of my children to camp, collectively dozens of times. And it has never occurred to me that someone wouldn't take care of them in case of an emergency. I agree, Caroline. If you are thinking about sending your daughter to Camp Mystic, you are nuts. There, I said it. And even if you want your child to have a chance to go and you think, well, it's not going to happen again, like, do you think, just based on the way that the families have been treated, are you going to support them? Because I wouldn't. Camp Mystic was the only sleepaway camp where campers died. There are lots of camps along the Guadalupe River. They evacuated. They evacuated. Nobody died. I mean, this was not an accident. They chose not to have an emergency evacuation plan. When there's a flood, what did it say? Do not leave your cabin. Do not wander away from your cabin. We will bring you supplies by boat. That was their plan. And when the family said, we haven't even heard from the Eastlands for months. We haven't even heard from them. The Eastlands said this: we have not been perfect at communicating. The distance that has grown between us saddens us all. It saddens us all. You're responsible for the death of our children, and you feel sad? No, you're not allowed to feel sad. You're not allowed to play victim. And that's really what it comes down to. This wasn't an act of God, Blake Bonner said, whose 9-year-old daughter died in the flooding, Lila. This was an act of pure complacency. It was 100% preventable failure. It was a failure of planning, prevention, detection, and response. Listen to that again. This wasn't an act of God. This was an act of pure complacency. It was 100% preventable failure. It was a failure of planning, prevention, detection, and response. He went on to say, our daughters paid an ultimate price for their obedience to a plan that was destined to fail. Kudos to you, Blake Bonner. Your heart just breaks for these families. It just breaks. That's Lila Bonner, 9 years old. She's got her fancy sweatshirt on that I think I've bought one of those, and braces and her Nikes. And she's going to camp excited. She didn't know that somebody had decided she wasn't worth saving. And again, all campers on Senior Hill must stay in their cabins. Those on the flats must also stay in their cabins. All cabins are constructed on high, safe locations. It doesn't look safe. Excuse me. You assume the lawyers told them not to respond. Well, if they hadn't responded, then they shouldn't have opened up the camp. They should still be keeping their mouths shut, in my mind. Because when they said, we're sad that distance has grown between us, shut up is what I would say to them. And I mean, maybe I do, but Dick Eastland should be glad that he died. Because if he had lived and all those children had died, he would wish he had died. And the fact that Tweety is alive annoys me. I mean, if you are responsible, if I am responsible just for my own children in this house and they drowned in a flood and I live, ask me what I was doing. It's just wrong. It is wrong. It's wrong. No wonder Blake Bonner doesn't, want some memorial. Is somebody gonna, they're just gonna now build a memorial to his daughter at the place where she was killed by terrible negligence? They own the land and cabins. How could they be stopped from reopening? Well, I'll tell you, Brenda, I know a sure way to not open. If no one signs up, if you have no campers, you are not open. Ding, ding, ding. Ding, ding, ding. Anyway, I hope somebody, you might be like, well, why does she care? Why is she involved? I've sent my kids to camp. And I hope if it were one of my children that was killed by people just being lazy, that somebody would stand up and talk for me. I hope somebody would speak up for me. Of course they want to reopen. They want to make money. And it gives, so many camps do the right thing. They're accredited. I mean, our camps in North Carolina are safe. I've never sent my child to a camp that's not accredited, and I didn't even know how important it was. Anyway, thanks for listening and for just continuing to think about these families, and particularly Sile Stewart, who has not been found. And as she said, Camp Mystic is pressing ahead with reopening, even if it means inviting girls to swim in the same river that may potentially still hold my daughter's body. That's pretty powerful to me. Good night.